Hi, I'm Catherine.
And I'm Gail, and we want to welcome you to our July 2021 Get Real episode. In celebration of our 2-year anniversary, we're bringing you Women Over 70s Aging Reimagined Retrospective and Perspective. In June of 2019, we launched our podcast, and we celebrated 22 years full production in June of 2021. And so we've done 4 to 5 episodes every single month. And we know, because we've lived through it now, that it takes a village to produce a podcast. Can you believe, Catherine, that we have done this?
Hard to believe.
It is hard to believe. We want to thank the people that are important in having gotten us to where we are today. First of all, my son, Steve Olsher, for his investment in podcasting and his interest in new media. And I think without him, I would never have gotten the idea to want to do this project, this passion project, as Catherine and I like to call it. And then we want to thank our magnificent guests who are willing to tell their stories. Without them, there would be no podcast. And it goes without saying, our production assistant, Christine Cruz. She is our production assistant, our social media director, our graphic designer, and she's given so much of herself and her time. She's really important to the project, and she's as strategic as she is creative. And finally, to all of our enthusiastic supporters and advisors.
And so now it's July 2021. And to our knowledge, Gail, I think we are the only regular podcast that interviews women over 70.
Yes.
There are other podcasts that interview or talk with women who are in the younger generations. And I think there might be a dating site for women over 70. But of course, that's not what we do. So,
no, right, for sure.
And we're thrilled when we look at the data that we have now over 35,000 listeners since we began 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. I think that's tripled in the last year or so. We have 750 listens per episode, and we have 600 members in our Facebook group. And we're very, very excited to keep growing, and we'll talk about that part a little bit later. So, often we are asked, we ask a lot of questions about podcasting. And first of all, how did we two get together? And you referred to us yesterday as the odd couple. So we may seem that way, but we met when you were pursuing your graduate work at School for New Learning at DePaul, and I was fortunate to be your faculty mentor. And during that time, we talked a lot about change and creativity, and eventually, I think our conversations moved more toward women. And once you graduated, we delighted in having regular dinners together, and always the talk turned to, well, what about women? What are the issues facing women, especially as we age? Mm-hmm. And then you said, well, one time, we have to stop talking, we have to do something. And I said, well, what could we do? Well, we're going to do a podcast, you said. So I thought, oh, that's interesting. I've never done that before. So why not?
And so we decided to do a podcast. And another question that people ask us is, well, how did we learn to do that? It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. We invested our time in an immersion program. We invested our money in an immersion program, and we spent 3 days at this immersion training that helped us learn how all the ins and outs of doing podcasting. We also listened to others, and by listening to other podcasts, we began to get a feel for what it was that we really wanted. And by being interviewed ourselves by other podcasters, mm-hmm. we also continued to learn more.
And that immersion was 3 days. It was also online course, pre and post
That's
those
true.
3
I
days.
forgot
So
about that, right.
thankfully, because there was every single detail was totally new to me.
Yes. I had some experience with it, having gone through, my son starting 2 different podcasts and being at his programs, but you had nothing.
Nothing.
You were, you were really trusting.
Well, sometimes it's better that we not know what lies ahead.
It's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was extremely helpful.
Yeah.
Couldn't have done it without that, I don't think.
No.
And then, so another question we often get, well, how do you find these remarkable women to interview? And that's probably the easiest part of our work, because we started with women that we know, and between us, we have quite a long list of women, and we're still dipping into that pool. But what's been really fun is women referring us to other women.
Right.
And it just, every week we get other referrals, and sometimes a woman will nominate herself, which is great. But usually it's a friend, a colleague, a daughter who's nominating her mother. So we have, I think, we like to think we have endless possibilities for our network. And it's just the power of a women's network.
Yes.
We really want to help each other shine and to get our stories out there. So that's really a gratifying part of what we do.
It sure is. It really is. It is what we do, right? It's right, the guests. Right. And so, what's involved in all of that? It takes a lot.
Yeah.
It takes a lot. We, we, unlike a lot of interviewers who we've been, we know about, we spend time before the podcast interviewing the guests. We do like a pre-interview. We get to know them. We get to know them a lot. And we always spend sometimes an hour and a half on the phone with some of these women. Right. And then we write up an introduction, which we send to them. We collaborate on everything with our guests. And I think that's one of the reasons that the show comes off the way it does. Mm-hmm. So we collaborate, and then we do the recording, and then we do show notes, and we collaborate with our guest on those. And so we really want them to be a part of our community.
Mm-hmm. And, it's a 30-minute interview conversation.
Right.
And of course, if you live 70, 80, 90, 100 years, you have a lot to talk about. So true. It really is kind of a collaboration. It's almost like a dance in terms of, what aspects of your life should we highlight, and who's going to lead and who's following. And because we don't script the conversations, but we do have a map in terms of what are some of the main topics that we want to cover.
Right. And after we do the recording, then we send it to Christine, our faithful assistant. Right. And she handles all the technology and distributes it among all the channels that we are now on. Right. Yeah.
So she's busy all the time.
All the time. We keep her very busy. Right? Yes, we do.
So we've already established how naive I was about podcasting to start. And one of the questions we often get is, does it cost anything to do a podcast? Mm-hmm. And I shouldn't be surprised at that question, because I had no idea. I had absolutely no idea what goes into the time investment, the dollar investment. And so, yes, it does cost to Christine. We do try to compensate her as best as we can.
We try.
Certainly investment of time, and you gave an indication of some of where our time goes. Fees for distribution channels, the website, getting a website designed, and then seems like constantly updating that.
Right.
Yeah, so there's a lot that goes into the behind the scenes costs.
Right, exactly. Yes, it's a labor of love. It's an absolute labor of love. And, it's hard to believe. I mean, there's so many other ways that we could have done it, but we really, given our backgrounds and who we are, we really wanted it to be a very professional program, a very professional show. And that, you can't leave to chance.
Right.
So there's been startup costs. I don't know. I think we spent about $10,000 to get going on it. Yeah. And then we probably spend maybe $1,500 every single month in order to produce the show. So as I said, it's been a real labor of love.
Which, just to be clear, comes out of our personal pockets.
Oh, yes. Yes. Painful pockets. Yes.
Painfully clear.
Yeah, painfully clear. So yes, we're going to start a fundraising campaign. We want to keep this labor of love going. We know that there's value. We'll tell you a little bit more about that. And so we're looking to secure donations from our community of guests, from our advocates, from our constituents, from our supporters and our colleagues. And, we're going to offer new opportunities to sponsor episodes. And there's a lot of books that are written by women for women. Mm-hmm. And so we are adding a Books for Women section to our website, and we're going to be promoting those for people. And then, we consider ourselves educational, right, Catherine?
Yes.
We want to be educational. And so we're going to, we already have. I mean, we've been very fortunate in that we've been invited to speak to a number of organizations already, and we want to continue to do that and to conduct workshops and educational programs.
Right.
Yeah.
So just to remind our listeners that we began as a podcast, and that will continue to be our signature feature.
Right.
And but what's so exciting at this point, after 2 years, is that as of now, we've interviewed 125 women. We have 125 episodes, and we have done what we wanted to do, and that is to interview women in their 70s, 80s, 90s, and Marion still caps us at age 103.
Right.
And our guests are across the United States. They're from Canada to Maine, California to Maine. They're everywhere in between. Switzerland, Jamaica, Russia, Poland. They're just everywhere. So we'll be interviewing someone in France soon. And then the other day we looked at a little bit more about our listeners, and our listeners come from 4 continents.
Yes.
From North America, including Canada, US, Mexico, from Oceania, which is Australia, Europe, Asia. So I don't think we really had much an idea about how wide a reach we have right now, and that will continue to grow.
Yes. Yes.
So I think the other way that we have tried to characterize our guests is we keep looking at the episodes and the themes of their stories, and so far we've come up with 8 categories as a way to help our listeners. If they're especially interested in a particular area, they can go to that on our website, and if they're interested in health and wellness, they can look and see which of the episodes deal with that topic. And that's been a little challenging because no one's life fits neatly into just one category.
That's for sure. Yes.
But just to that expressive arts, it's everything from installation art to poetry to fiction to nonfiction to painting, drawing,
sculpture,
mm-hmm. Singing. So it's singing jazz.
Right.
And social activism. That's probably our largest category. And
so
it's not surprising that women of our age group are active and involved, that many of them are going to be socially active, activists. And these are women who've have been so since the late 60s,
Mhm.
1960s. So they're very much involved in continuing to do, for social good. Reinvention, I suppose most of our guests could fall into that category. As by the time you get to this age in life, I think any one of us has reinvented ourselves at least once.
Oh, yes. Right.
But it's interesting. It's reinventing in terms of careers. People have gone from being a social worker to a in a corporate setting to selling real estate, and so they're really definitely changing careers.
Mhm.
And we've had a number of women who were nuns at an early young age and
Surprising
left the
number
convents.
of our guests. Yes.
So that's a major reinvention right there.
Yes. Right.
So it's a really interesting category. Health and wellness is, I suppose, kind of what it sounds like, but we have a number of guests who are very interested in holistic approaches to health and wellness in terms of mind, body, spirit.
Right. The energies.
Wellness, energy.
Mhm.
And probably a close cousin to that then is spirituality and healing. And I was trying to think about how did we arrive at that one? And I think that a lot of the women who are in that category have dealt with or are helping others deal with pretty deeply traumatic events. So there is a healing of the spirit
Mhm. Yes.
that has been taking place, needs to take place. So that's where it's not religion per se, but it is a healing of the spirit
Right.
and the soul. Social service, I think that's where a lot of our volunteers fit
Mhm.
in that area. Enhancing career. Not that somebody's just stayed in the same narrow path, but they've been continuing to build on areas of expertise and commitment, and then branching out and making connections that are sort of unusual. And then maybe our newest one is play.
Yes.
Thank goodness, someone finally said, we're supposed to be having fun. And thankfully, we have a number of women that so far that we are in the play category. And when we talked about that at our podcast discussion club recently, it was so interesting. So what does play mean to people? And what is fun? And
Mhm.
when is work fun? And when is family fun? And what's adventure? And is that part of play? And so my understanding of play got expanded quite a bit through that discussion.
And I love our guest who said, retirement is not retirement, it's inspirement.
Yes, right.
Let's keep learning and doing and
Right.
playing and seeing where life can take us.
Yeah.
And they
Right.
do inspire us, our guests. There's no question about it. Every time we're through
Every time.
the show, we say to each other, wow, wasn't she amazing?
We do.
Yes.
Every time.
Yeah. And we're so much more than a podcast, right? We really have come to believe that we are a voice for aging women.
Mm-hmm.
And that it is important for us it's important work that we're doing. It's important for us to be doing, sharing the stories of these vital, vibrant women of all age from 70 on who just are help us see that there's so much more to life. There's so much yet to do in life. And they give us different perspectives on how to think about our inspirement.
Mm-hmm.
And even if we're not retired, we still get a new perspective on how to have fun, as you said,
Mm-hmm.
and spend our lives. We're a growing community of women. Our Facebook group of 600 already, the 125 guests that we've had, and the advocates. We want to be a community of women who who are part of this social movement that shatters myths and reshapes conversations about women and women aging. That's our goal. And and our audience tells us that Women Over 70 gives voice and inspiration to vital, creative older women, that Women Over 70 illustrates the realities and rewards of women's aging, and that Women Over 70 offers a valuable resource for women at any age. And it's not as though, Catherine, we only ask our guests to tell the good things that are happening. We want to be honest about aging and what all of that means in its various different parts of our lives, right? In losing partners and spouses, and what it means to be living on your own now, what it is to have breast cancer or other kinds of illnesses. And we really ask our guests to share those parts of their lives because that's what makes them real.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
They do. And our guests are very candid, I think, and authentic about not afraid to talk, revealing, not afraid to talk about that. Although, again, 30 minutes goes by way too quickly, but
right. Yeah.
And it's the way that most women talk about that sort of that in balance or on balance, the realities are there, and they try they deal with them but not dwell on them.
Mm-hmm.
So they're always looking forward as much as possible, moving as much as possible, physically, mentally.
Yes.
Keep moving, as Twyla Tharp would say.
Yes, right, exactly. As one of our guests who, during the pandemic, discovered that she loved painting.
Right.
And started to take up art. And so they move is a good word. They're constantly reinterpreting what life can do for them.
Yes.
They fascinate us.
They do. So 2 years, and we want to just, pause and celebrate.
Yes, for sure.
With all of our listeners, what they've helped all of us accomplish in two short years.
Yes.
Long years, 2 short years. But so we think about, well, of course, we're constantly thinking about what next, because we now we're hooked, right? This is what we want to be doing.
Right.
So we have some, we think, pretty exciting plans in the works.
Sure do.
One is to, all this past year, we've had a podcast discussion club. So we, the participants, we select 3 podcasts to listen to ahead of time, like a book club, and then we come together and talk about the women, and always then that sparks conversation about ourselves. So what about their story connects with our story, and so I think our understanding of ourselves deepens, and then we also play around with the category itself. Well, how does this help us understand health and spirituality differently, or deeper, or play, for example?
Mm-hmm.
So we I think you and I both love the podcast discussion.
Yes.
And we're going to continue that, and we're going to add to that then the what we're going to call deep talk forums, so that we will draw from our guests those that have expertise, specializations in issues that matter to women as we age, and then we're going to encircle that. So we're calling that the Age and Reimagined Circle.
Yes.
That will be a membership that we will launch in September.
Mm-hmm.
So we're continuing the podcast discussions and embellishing with expertise from our guests.
Mm-hmm.
We are eager, as you mentioned before, to do retreats. We had retreat plans back in 2020, then in 2021. And of course, the pandemic has slowed us down in that regard. So we will be doing retreats, probably both on Zoom and in person.
Mm-hmm. Right.
On Zoom because we have this, national reach, international, so we don't want to exclude women from participating. And we also want to have that intimacy of being in person and really digging into issues and the excitement of growing older.
Right.
I'm telling myself. And so those are continuing to have thought-provoking conversations in a variety of different ways with our community. And as you said, programs, speaking, we'll continue to do that, and be guests on other people's podcasts as we have done.
The beauty of the podcast discussions has been that in addition to helping us look at things from our own perspective, it's the intimacy that develops among the participants.
Yes.
Who are sharing stories that they maybe have never shared with anybody else before.
True.
Definitely not a therapy session. Absolutely not.
No.
But
No.
more of an opportunity to get off your chest some of these ideas and issues that are rolling around in your head.
Mm-hmm.
And so using our podcast episodes and the stories of the women as the base for that makes these discussions really, really, really rich.
They do. And the last one we just had earlier this month, I thought was especially interesting because we have been meeting together for a period of time, and I think there's a growing trust factor, and people kind of see each other as friends who maybe they'd never met before the podcast discussions, and being feeling pretty free to call each other out. So I'd say, well, that's quite an assumption, don't you think? I mean,
yes, right.
Right. Or that is not my experience. And so, and very gentle and challenging in a good way, I think.
Yeah.
To challenge us to think.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And so I think that, we really see ourselves as a catalyst for women's voices. The voices of those who are in conversation with us during our programs that we do, and a catalyst for women's voices that are out in the greater community of guests that we share with the wider public. And so that's pretty neat. And you are an educational entrepreneur. And I am a business entrepreneur. And look at us now. We've become social entrepreneurs.
True.
I think that suits us very well, don't you?
I think it does. In fact, working with you in this whole arena has made me appreciate even more what I was doing previously in my work in education. But I hadn't really thought of myself that much as an entrepreneur. I was more of an innovator, which is innovator on entrepreneur, pretty similar.
Yes.
But yes, social entrepreneur feels like a good fit.
Yes, it does.
Yeah,
absolutely. Right. Yeah.
So we've given some indication of what's coming next. We're really excited to have our people continue to join with us, and we invite new listeners and members all of the time. Yes. And I think all of us, if we make a commitment to doing whatever we can to dispel the myths that are still so prevalent around women's aging and older women. Listen to the language that's being used, the language that others use, the language that we use ourselves, even when we're talking with each other, or our own thoughts. Is this a language that is constructive and future-oriented, or are we unconsciously still buying into some of these stereotypes? And to speak up. I mean, our women have no problem speaking up.
No, they don't.
So I was kind of preaching to the choir there, but
Right.
but to just together in any opportunity that we have in our own way to speak up, to speak out, to be good role models for aging women. And I think that's a lot of what we have to offer.
I know that I personally have felt. I think I feel that I have moved so much on a line here from when I used to find the jokes about old women funny. I don't find them funny anymore. I find them disparaging.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the kind of thing that all of us can pay attention to and change the dialogue about.
Yeah. For a while, I was going to card stores and looking at the cards, birthday cards, especially. And I started collecting some of those, and I thought, wait, I don't want to be spending my money on these awful things.
Right.
But I thought we could use them in a workshop, as examples. But I have quite a collection, I'm sad to say.
Yes. We'll hang on to them. You just never know. So, if you're a woman over 70, if you are a woman, stand up in your power. Stand up in your own power and understand that this lifelong wisdom that you're gaining or already have and age bring you that power. And so express yourself. And most of all, be a part of our community. We want you. We want you to join with us in this.
We do.
And participate in our conversations. We'll see you when we're, we'll be 2 in some years, some part of the year old for our next Get Real episode. So see you next time.
See you. Take care.
Bye-bye.